is Joey B. This is another edition of the Blind Knowledge podcast. If you haven't heard of Blind Knowledge, we are over at blindknowledge.com. We are digital media, digital content creation. That's social media content, that is podcasts, that's videocast, that's TikTok, that's YouTube, that's all kinds of digital multimedia. And that's what we do. We have 19 active podcasts over on the website right now and many more to come. And speaking of podcasts that are on Blind Knowledge, well, that's who we're chilling with today. We are chilling with the science fiction Remnant. So let's bring them in right now. We have Gio and we have Robert. So what's up, guys? How's your evening going?
Hello.
Oh,
Hey.
Hello
Hello once
cool.
again. Oh, hey, it's how we do the thing, I guess you could say. We are live all over the place right now on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, probably on a cloud somewhere, I'm assuming on someone's projector screen, which would be pretty cool.
oh yeah.
That would be awesome.
Maybe someday.
Hey man, there's never big enough for me.
Gio, I don't know if they can encapsulate your dome on just one projector screen. They might need two. For mine, they need 5, so we're in the same boat.
It would be too much, the Captain
Heads, big
Chaos,
brains. Yeah, you know how it is, Robert. We just try to keep it less chaotic and we go smooth and silky. That's what we're going to do on this episode of the Blind Knowledge Podcast.
Smooth and silky with me? Good luck, man.
We're going to try. We're going to try for sure. We'll see how it goes. For me, it's a new setup. It's a new state. It's a new apartment. We're going to hope that the lights don't shut off. We're going to hope that my microphone stays on, and we're going to try to stay on task for sure. It's wild, man. It's wild. It's wild to change things up. Now, you guys are both in Florida, right?
Yep. We're in each coast.
From coast to coast.
Representing each coast. Beautiful. Okay. So, Robert, let's start with you. Were you the one that started the science fiction Remnant? Was it your idea to start this podcast up?
Yeah. It was my idea. I've been wanting to open a podcast for the longest time. And, all of my friends who are actually listening to this would remember how long I've been talking about it. And it actually took Giancarlo to kind of push me into making it a reality. Because, Gio can actually attest to this. We might have a movie that is an hour and a half. And, we'd sit down and that, Gio happened to be to experience this when he was living in my house at the time. But this is a common occurrence with my friends as well. When we sit down on the couch and we watch a movie, and a 1 hour and a half movie could turn out to be 3 hours because we keep on pausing and talking about it. So when Gio was here, it's like, okay, why don't we just open up a podcast? And that's how the idea came up.
And that's how it came about. That's how you got rolling.
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Pretty funky indeed, Robert. So how did you find your cohorts here? How did you find Gio and how did you find Ray, who's not with us tonight?
Yeah, Gio is, Ray is in the future. So, hopefully he can go back in the past and join us. But, we're hopeful.
Fair. Okay. All right.
The story goes like this. I decided to do the podcast and my first episode, which by the way, Gio is very familiar with this, how much I hate that first episode. I was going to do a scripted show. So the episode is about 7 minutes long. It has a lot of content on it. And it took me I think about 2 weeks, just getting everything prepared and ready. Well, it might have taken that long because it was my first time doing a podcast, but after it was all done and I listened to it, it was all out. I did not like it. Although that would probably be my personal opinion because I still find a lot of people that like that episode.
Perfectionism.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. So I decided to do another episode, but this time I told Gio, hey, Gio, you want to come in as a guest I want to change the format of my podcast. Figure that after the first episode. And I told him, hey, you want to come in and be on this? You seen John Carter? I seen you. We're watching John Carter. We read all the books, so it's like, yeah, come as a host. And it's like, yeah, sure.
I read till book 7 or 8, man. I couldn't make it all through.
Yeah, you're right.
11 books.
I read all 12.
11 full books?
There were 12. A
12
lot of
full
people
books?
say
They're
11.
large. They're large.
Large
Hello?
books.
A lot of people say 11, and I'll go to my grave and saying that it's 12. I don't care what people say.
Probably. I don't
12.
discuss that.
Wow.
I don't discuss that. I just made it to book 7 or 8. So
7 or 8
Yeah.
is pretty strong on a 12
oh
book.
man, Edgar Rice
sprint.
Burroughs. Yeah,
Yeah, he's an amazing writer. He's, everybody knows him most for Tarzan. He's the creator of Tarzan.
yeah.
Oh, Tarzan. Okay.
Exactly.
right.
So, we decided to record that one, and the chemistry was so good that I told Gio, hey, you want to do this? You want to just come in as a host? So then we recorded our Gattaca episode, which, by the way, Gio, I still get goosebumps when I listen to it.
That episode was good,
Aw.
man.
Yeah. So,
That's a good thing.
and
a
that's
good
how
thing if you
everything
can
was.
Feel it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Robert, go ahead.
No, that's quite all right. So that's how everything started. And to answer your question as to how we got Ray, Ray was actually a fan throughout season 1. And there was a time, I can't remember the details, where I was considering stopping the podcast. And, we were talking on Twitter, and he's like, oh, no, don't do that. It's like, I'm on other people, and they didn't want the content to stop. So it's like, okay, if you want, I can join in and I can help you out. So season 2, we got Ray.
Okay. Ray from the future, of course.
Ray from the future.
Not to be confused with Ray from the past or just Ray. Okay. So you guys really, you put a lot of planning, it sounds like, into the startup from the jump, Robert. You said that you 2 weeks of planning, you guys are reading books, you didn't like what you had at first, and now, well, let me ask you this. Do you like what you have now?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
What's the difference between now and back then?
Basically, I'm going to rephrase that. I like from season 1, episode 2 and on. And our content has continued to be consistent. The only difference is in season 2, we brought more, I don't know if I want to say comedy, but we brought the fun. We kicked the fun up to the level 10 on season 2.
Okay.
So, and that's where, the creation of Captain Chaos, which was not a thing on season 1.
So that's cool. So you guys kind of loosened the reins a bit, kind of loosened up, and just kind of let it ride, it sounds like.
Definitely. And when we do our episodes, because I remember at the beginning, I tried to rein it in, but I think it doesn't work for our format. So on those few episodes that I said, okay, we're gonna just record an hour. So I'm watching the clock and trying to keep everything, because I'm actually the producer and the editor. I do everything on the show, and I noticed that it wasn't natural. So after that, I decided, you know what, we're just gonna let the conversation go. And that's the reason why we ended up being a long format podcast, where you see we have episodes that might be an hour and a half, and you see episodes that could be 4 hours long.
Yeah, right now there's a huge trend in podcasting to minimize and to go short, to go with like 6-minute, 8-minute episodes, 10-minute episodes, even, shorter, way shorter than an hour and a half. Personally, I think it can go either way. Like, I listen to a podcast that's usually at least an hour long. I listen to some podcasts that are like 15 minutes. Do you guys... Why the longer length? Do you just feel it works better for your style?
Yeah, it works. I mean, we tried it before, where we try to make it short. As a matter of fact, at one point, I was considering making the jump to make it shorter. I think it was during the beginning half of season 2, and I got a lot of fans saying no, not to do it. I think why it works for us is the fact that we have a lot of deep conversations. They are, we could get really deep psychologically, philosophically, scientifically, and that that kind of works for the format that we have.
And for anyone joining us for the first time, anyone just hearing about Science Fiction Remnant, the podcast itself, what is it about? What can you summarize for our listeners?
Well, I think Gio, and we might have a couple of quotes from our fans. One of the ones that I like that kind of represents, and Gio, you can bring another one if you have in mind, that represents what we do is we had one fan submitted saying that it's those conversations that you have on the way to a Comic-Con. That's what the show is.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, the cool kids in the school geeking out about things that they love.
Yeah. I dig that. That's cool.
Guys in the sofa, we've been drinking beer and talking nerd.
Talking nerd. Hell
Yep.
yeah. Right on. Geo, Captain Chaos. For those that don't know, Geo is not only on the podcast, he's actually also a killer artist. This dude does some great artwork. You can find him over here at blindknowledge.com, of course. Hopefully we'll get some of your artwork up on the site and we'll get things rolling for you that way. Now, you strike me as a different personality from Robert. Actually,
way different.
Way
different. Yeah.
If you listen to the podcast, you'll realize that.
That's the chemistry between Robert and me. It's like we are kind of like a push and pull relationship. So most of the time we have opposing views, but we like that too.
Yes.
So yeah, it sounds like it works well. I mean, from the episode, I've obviously listened to the podcast. I dig it. I like the interaction that the three of you guys have. Neither you, Gio, Robert, or Ray are the same personality. You're much different in all aspects, but you guys share this passion and love and understanding for these nerdy topics. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were first talking, it was like Battlestar Galactica, I think is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
What are some other topics that you guys have hit on your podcast thus far?
I mean, we cover a big array of things because we cover even video games that are sci-fi. We cover anything sci-fi, comic books, manga, animes, TV series, movies. Books. We don't limit ourselves to what media it comes through. If it's sci-fi and it's something brainy, and I mean, I owe to Robert my science fiction card, but before that, like it was not like I didn't have an affinity for that kind of material. Like I never was somebody to just watch an action movie because it was entertaining. It had to have something brainy, or it would not catch my attention. And that's how we find each other, like really liking most of the things that we share in common.
Okay, Gio, we're in a safe place. You can tell everybody that I tied you up and forced you sci-fi.
Yeah.
No, you didn't force me, man. Nobody can force me to do anything, man. You know that.
Well, it's cool. You guys are a good addition to the lineup we have going. Now, I don't think you guys have ever had any guests on, have you?
Oh, yes. We have guests all the time.
Well, you can tell how good my research is. What are some cool guests or some cool ongoing people that you have revolving in and out of the podcast?
The guests that we have actually represent one view that all three hosts have. And it's the idea. We have kind of like a hashtag going on that is, this is sci-fi. The hashtag was born from, for all of you who are familiar with the old sci-fi channel, it was that original sci-fi channel, they put in the commercials and it's okay, this is sci-fi. So the idea that I had was, if you're a creator of, a podcaster, if you are a writer, if you are any type of creator of the sci-fi genre, to follow that hashtag and to kind of share the love, because the whole idea, like Gio said, we don't want to limit ourselves to a particular IP. That was the issue that I had at the beginning, where you have the Star Wars people, you have the Star Trek people, but you don't have one that is like encapsulates everything together.
True.
So
true.
The hosts that we have on our show are basically our what's the word that I'm looking for? Is our determination to help the sci-fi community grow. So we have a bunch
mission.
of our mission. Better
choose
yet,
to accept.
And those are, like, for example, the last episode that we have. By the way, our episodes hit every Saturday at 7 a.m. Eastern time. So one example is our last episode. We were talking about the movie Star Wars: A New Hope, and we invited Ro from Scarif Podcast. And this is a podcast that kind of talks nerdy, is kind of like us, but it's centralized on Star Wars, yet they talk about all kinds of things like Space 1999 and all that stuff. Okay. So that's pretty much, I mean, we had at one point one of my favorite guests. I have the author of this book. I don't know if you can see it.
No, I can't quite see it.
My robot girlfriend? Was the Allison?
His robot girlfriend.
So we have Wesley.
That was an awesome episode, man. Wesley.
That was an awesome episode. Turns out that he was a fan as well of our content.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, we have guests like that. We so far has been a comic book artists, like the artist who created the comic book Arcs, which, by the way, amazing comic book.
Oh my god.
So this is pretty much the guests that we have. If you do sci-fi content, we welcome you on our show.
Well, okay then. Fair enough, dude. Fair enough. If you're just joining us on the live stream, my name is Joey B. This is the Blind Knowledge Podcast, blindknowledge.com. And more importantly, though, the science fiction Remnant. You can catch them on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. You can see them on Ghana. And of course, you guys have the website, right?
Yeah. And if we are not where you go get your podcast, please let me know. We'll add it.
Yeah, you guys are pretty much everywhere. Stitcher, and the whole remnant of things. No pun intended. Dun-dun-ding.
We got there flipping the sandwich. What's up?
Yeah, I flip it a switch. You guys seem to have a really good dynamic, which I would totally agree with. Like we touched on before, total ends of the spectrums, yet you guys have this information and this knowledge to drop, which is awesome. And there's definitely a niche for that right now. I remember, because we talked about this before, like back in the day, Battlestar Galactica was kind of, I don't know, it wasn't the coolest thing, or in Star Trek wasn't the coolest thing, and maybe it isn't still, but there's an acknowledgement, and there is definitely an audience, a deep-seated audience for things of that nature. Star Wars,
cult following,
cult following, exactly. Have you spoken with, or do you get to speak to some of that cult following? Like, do they hit you up regularly? Do they say, hey, on Twitter, or do you get emails? And if that does happen, do you go with what they're looking for, or do you kind of just stay on your own track?
Well, so far, the biggest interaction that we're getting, the bigger engagement, has been on Twitter. We have also engagement on our Discord. But we definitely listen. There have been many occasions where fans wanted us to cover a specific IP, and we have done it. To my better judgment, as Gio can attest. For example, Gio, remember our episode on um, Mirror, Dark
Black
Mirror,
Mirror, Black
Black
Mirror.
Mirror, Black Mirror.
How could I not? Forcing you into something, that's something marvelous.
Well, I am an empath for all of you who are not familiar. So, watching shows that are dark and have a very bad, dark ending, they take a toll on my biology. So, if you listen to that episode, you'll probably hear me talk to Gio and says, "Look at my heart monitor; it's 120, and I'm sitting down here just talking."
Really, it physically makes you like gets your heart rate up and like makes you sweat a little bit.
Makes him feel alive, man.
Well, yeah, I'm amazed.
Dying.
I'm amazed I didn't feign in there. But that's what we do for the fans. The fans wanted to hear me talk about that specific episode, and we made it happen.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's good that you have that engagement with your fans, and at least you can hear, the good parts of what you're doing, the bad parts of what you're doing. Well, not bad, but maybe strengths and weaknesses. You call it whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definite growth within your podcast. It's a big difference between season 1 and where you're at today. Where do you see this going? Do you think you're going to incorporate more? Well, actually, you do the live streaming, right? You guys do the live streaming video, and those can be found on YouTube, correct?
Well, we don't do live anymore. We used to do a couple of lives in season 1. So what we do, and for people that are not familiar, is our episodes drop on Saturday at 7 a.m. Eastern time. And then what happens, like, for example, our Christmas episode was on the 24th of December. It came out at 7. So that recorded video was just dropped today on the 24th of January. So if you're listening to an episode right now on audio and you want to watch the video, just mark your calendar, because that same day, the next month, it hits YouTube.
That's cool. So you guys have the live stream aspect. And it sounds like if you see it on YouTube, if you see that live stream video, you're actually going to catch the episode before it actually hits Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Yeah, you actually hit it. You can actually listen to it first on audio format, and then a month later you get the video format.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. That's and I've been trying to do that too as well with my podcast. And then I'm like you, Robert. I'm kind of a perfectionist in a way where I'm like, oh, that wasn't right. We got to take the whole thing down. Screw it. Screw it. We missed that sentence. Oh, yeah, I didn't say that word right. Oh, we got to take the whole thing down. Do you ever and it could, because Robert, you're like basically the mastermind behind science fiction Remnant. Do you ever, whether it's the audio or video, do you ever come across yourself being like, wow, we need to make big changes, or wow, we have to fix this, that, and the other thing? Do you ever get caught in that, like,
all the time,
in that wheel?
Well, Gio says all the time. I think the better answer would be yes, all the time, but not enough for me to ever say we have to re-record something. But in the aspect of is all a learning curve. So say, for example, I recorded something today and I wasn't quite happy. So far, I'm lucky enough that I like it enough to publish it. But then I'll make notes of those things, and in the next episode, we'll correct it.
That's fair. And the only reason why I asked that is because I've been in there where you're editing audio, and hours become hours, and it's like, where do you draw the line? How perfect can something get? How crystal clear can something be? So it's good that you recognize that, because I was talking to someone recently who was saying he was editing for, like, I think he said 15 hours or something like that.
Oof.
It's like, you got to draw the line somewhere, bro.
Wow.
Like, it's got to be, like, it's going to be what it's going to be, whether it's audio, video, or whatever, the creative project is. So it's good to hear you have that cutoff point. So, well, we got Captain Chaos over here. It's funny. How long do you think you've known Ray at this point, Mr. Chaos?
I mean, we've known Ray since day one, since he started with us in the podcast, and I
Right
think that
on.
we had it invited in one of our episodes first, right?
Well, I have a story about that. Um, and this is the interaction that we have, and basically this is the interaction you see on our show when the three of us are there. So basically, what happened is we recorded an episode for Alita Battle Angel. Gio has never seen that movie. I seen that movie God knows how many times. It's one of those movies that my entire family wants a part two.
Oh,
That's including my mom, who is over 80 years old. Everybody in my family. So I show it to Gio, and Gio said, "Oh my God, this this is an amazing movie. I want a part two also." So I said, "God, well, we're going to record an episode." So we recorded that episode in season one, and we were happy with the content, like we normally do. And all of a sudden, we get like we normally get our engagement on Twitter from Ray, which at the time was a listener.
Listener.
And he said, "Oh my God, you guys, I just heard the episode on Alita. You guys got," and I still remember this till this day. I might not
So
be
many things
verbatim,
right, but so many
might
things
not be
wrong.
verbatim, but he said, "You guys got so many things right, but oh boy, so many things wrong." And I was like, "We have to have him on the show."
Yep.
It's that
So
it's that third dynamic approach. Yeah, and so you just kind of you gave him that spotlight to say why, basically.
definitely, and
Oh
and
yeah.
we really liked and something that we foster on our show that I hope our listeners could take away from. There's so many negativities out there, and what I like to say is like it's okay to have opposing opinions. It's healthy to have a debate as long as you don't have an argument or a fight.
Right? I agree with that 110%. You should be able to have opposing views, yet not want to just beat the crap out of each other.
And be
Yep.
polite about it. And that's what we do in our show. I could be completely opposed to what, say, Gio says or what Ray might say. But we're not going to go, like I've seen so many of these arguments where, they might not mean to start a fight. It's not intentional, but just the way the delivery is done all wrong in a way that the other opposing view would take offense.
We're
And
okay
we're
to
very
disagree.
careful on that. I'm sorry?
That we're okay to agree to disagree.
Exactly, and we're very, very, very fine with that. And if you are familiar with our dynamic on our show, um, Ray is the fact checker. I am the overthinker, and Gio just brings the fun.
Yep. I'm the clown.
But but I would have to say, many people say, yeah, Gio, he's the clown, but don't let that fool you.
Yeah, don't get it
He is
twisted, right?
just an overthinker as I am, and he brings home the points. So he can
Yeah.
get really philosophical, psychological. And we have this persona that we have created with Captain Chaos, where Captain Chaos don't read. But the real Geo,
That's hilarious because I read a lot.
exactly. So the real Geo is a
Boring
different
shit.
is a different story. He reads a lot and he's very, very intelligent. But the Captain Chaos persona is not really there.
Yep.
Different things happen when that green light goes on, man. You have a lot of creative uh, you know, how can I put this? The creative boundaries are wider than they would be in
Creative
a
freedom.
normal
Yeah.
9 to 5. Yeah, yeah. So it's funny that happened to you too. I've had that happen to me where we've invented characters and we've become these characters on the air, and then we make those segments. Like we had one called General Blood back in the day when I was doing internet radio, and that was my buddy John. We would have these various almost cartoonish characters take over a segment for live audio, live internet radio, and it was phenomenal because it changed it changed it from being a static show of just like, okay, Joe's talking commercial, Joe's talking commercial, to like, ooh, this is like a creative, boundless expedition and journey. Uh, it's cool, and shout out to Captain Chaos. Keep doing your thing.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I never really thought about it. But our podcast is more of a radio than a podcast. Because and the reason why I say this, and Gio, correct me if I'm wrong with this, but we are reactionary.
Yeah,
and
we're not a review podcast.
Yeah, we're reactionary, and we are what's the word that I'm looking for? We are not your typical scripted podcast. We basically say what comes to mind during the conversation that we're having. So that to me is more of a kind of like a radio talk, where in the radio you can't really hit pause because you're live.
Right.
So that's basically what we do and I make sure everybody knows we're reactionary if you're in our podcast. So everything you say will be posted. So just have that in your mind when you're on our show.
Yeah, and that's a lot of my approach too. Is like we're just gonna go for it. There's the pre-planning that I put in. There's the notes and the note taking and the reading and the, figuring out where I'm gonna go with an episode or an interview episode in this case, and then we're off and running. So if the microphone falls over, the microphone falls over. The cool thing about podcast is you can always go back into post. You can always edit it. You can always do that if you choose. But like right now, we're live. We're live right now on all these different social media platforms, and it's like just going right up against the wind, naked, basically.
Yeah.
And just being
exactly.
Like, this is what's gonna happen.
Let's say that, but I was gonna ask you if I go naked right now, it's gonna go on air.
Well, we might get dropped from YouTube.
Yeah, different networks.
I know that much of a chaos.
Hey, just leave that for only Gio, okay?
We would need those blurry lines and those blurry dots that come up, like the the editing, when they stop the censorship, basically.
Yeah. And just want to mention we are. I actually released the podcast as an explicit. Not because we're constantly swearing or saying things, but occasionally we go into that that conversation, and I didn't want to limit our guest. And so far, would you say, Gio, you would be the major culprit?
Yeah, I'm the reason.
So yeah, if you look at our podcast and you notice it's listed as explicit, and that's the reason why we sometimes it's not the entire episode, but we sometimes go that way. We might have an episode, like for example, we invited our dear friend, dear Nikki, to do an episode on Barbarella, and in that episode, I had to put a disclaimer that it was of a sexual nature because the movie was of a sexual nature, and we were talking about stuff that would be like that.
So you had to put the explicit up just because of that. That's interesting.
Well, it's in every episode.
Yeah. Well, I just thought you meant like swearing, things of that nature.
All the time.
Oh, we do swear, but sometimes we go a little farther than that.
And sometimes people want to hear that too. Sometimes it's good to be a step out of bounds, I guess.
People like that, but they don't want to admit it.
Well, one thing that I want to say is we don't do it because we can. We do it when the conversation calls for it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. I mean, if you have a guest on that wants to go in a certain direction, why not just let them go that way?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's the best material that you have to work with too. I mean, to limit yourself and to censor yourself, especially in an artistic platform and artistic anything, is really setting yourself up for failure. It's when you have to figure out where that puzzle piece is going to fit in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So, at least in my opinion. So, what's the newest episode on that these fine folks can check out?
Well, our latest episode was a great conversation about Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. That movie was released in 1977, and we realized that we have been neglecting Star Wars, although we do love Star Wars. So,
which is interesting because you're a sci-fi podcast.
Mm-hmm. And we have done, like, we have previous episodes like Kenobi. We discussed The Mandalorian. So I was just trying to bring the balance and do a little bit more Star Wars. I noticed that we haven't done much Star Trek as well, so we're going to go ahead and fix that. But the thing is, when you're talking about sci-fi, the genre as a whole is so big. And people don't realize, oh, you only have X episodes on, say, Star Trek. And most people that are inside the bubble, and I like to call it bubble, not in a negative way. It's just the fans gravitate towards what they love the most. So let's say, for example, I might have a fan that look at our catalog and say, yeah, we haven't talked much about Star Trek. You might not be covering all there is about sci-fi, but the thing is, sci-fi is huge, and that's the challenge that we're having. If you look at our catalog, is well balanced. We might have an episode from 1977. We might have an episode. We did one for 1902.
1902.
We have the very first sci-fi movie ever made. We did an episode on that. We're thinking about doing the very first sci-fi book ever written, which is in the 2nd century, by it was a Greek called Lucian.
That's cool.
So I'm trying to keep the balance on our show where we cover a wide range of sci-fi. And that's because that's what we do. We do love sci-fi. We want to make sure we have a balanced show.
Right on, Robert. You have a very good way with words, my friend. You've explained things very, very well, I think, where I can totally follow. I don't know if Gio can. We're not sure about Gio right now. But
Gio, let loose. Come on, let loose.
Yeah, Gio, what's good over there, Captain Chaos?
I mean, I am the one that brings the crazy side all the time. But I mean, Robert is like the Neil deGrasse Tyson of radio.
Oh,
he dumbifies it for me.
That is such a big compliment. I don't know how to take it.
And there's an age difference here too.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Generational.
Generational difference, yeah. So you guys are looking at these topics and in your perspectives, we're talking years apart. I mean, Robert's like 74 over here.
Holy shit.
Gio,
let me just give the audience a little idea. Back in 1977, when Star Wars: A New Hope came out, I was 7 years old.
Wow.
My very first movie was Logan's Run. Great episode, by the way. I was 6 years old when I was in the theater watching that movie, and that movie is the reason why I love sci-fi.
I wasn't still a swimmer.
Do you remember being there, like being 6 or 7 in those theaters and like that experience for you?
That experience, and again, if you listen to that show, it has great conversation and experiences. But one thing that I can tell you, because obviously when you're that young, you don't see things the way that they're intended, obviously, because your brain is not that developed yet.
Sure.
But I do remember there is a scene where the tank of water breaks and water comes rushing through, and the main stars of the show are being washed away by the flood of water coming from this building. And I remember on the theater when I was 6 years old, getting up on the chair, and my uncle, who actually took me to see that movie, says, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to get wet."
And as a 6 or 7-year-old, you're probably like, "Where did the water come from?"
Exactly, and then wondering where the water is going, because I see it coming out, but I don't see it on my feet.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
The colors of the movie. I don't know if you ever seen Logan's Run. I invite anybody. Everybody should watch that movie.
Great movie.
Yeah, and it's a big compliment coming from Gio because he's from a different generation. If he says that the movie is good,
Oh yeah,
there's some valid to that. But I remember the colors, the 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 clothes the actors were wearing. They're very very colorful. The whole
I love the
aesthetics.
Tinder in that movie, man.
Yeah, the Tinder was amazing. So, yeah, that's what in that episode. One of the things that I love the most is discussing our experiences. So my experience of watching that movie was completely different. Not only between me, Gio, and Ray, that me and Ray are actually closer to the same age as Gio, but also this is a movie we have rewatched throughout our lives. So we were also discussing our experiences rewatching the movie multiple times. Because that movie was ahead of its time. And
Yeah.
as we grow older, not only our brain changes, but our society changes. So we have a different perspective every single time we watch that movie. And that's one of the things that I find fascinating about that episode that we were discussing.
Yeah, I mean, society must have changed over and over again, or as it does, right?
Yeah.
Gio, you're in your 20s, right? Or you're
Thank you, man. I appreciate
I
that. I'm
forget.
in my 30s.
I should know that. But I mean, even if there's 10 years of a difference in an age, uh, that's 10 years of movement within a culture or society, 10 years of different laws, different attitudes, music, different artistic forms that come out. So comic books and movies.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You
And I
guys
mean,
ever? Yeah, go ahead, Gio.
no, I mean, the funny thing is that like I always found myself looking at things that I were like not my time. So I saw myself always as an outcast. Like when I was 13 or 14, I was listening to The Doors, Jimi Hendrix. Most people were not even bothering with that thing in 2005, 2010. There's an age difference of what, Robert? Like 25, 20 years old?
Yeah,
You,
and
you and me?
that's what's so fascinating because, for example, that movie was almost 50 years old. That's
Hmm.
incredible to think about. And we had Gio's point of view. And that's one of the things that I like also about most of the episodes that we do is we have a different point of view coming from Gio.
Well, it sounds like you guys are off and running. Um, what kind of topics do you find? Actually, you know what? Before I get to that question, I got one that I've been meaning to write down, and I just remembered it. Are you guys gonna cover Q at all in Star Trek Next Generation?
That's one of the things that we are going to try to fix. So far, I think we only have one Star Trek episode.
If you're gonna do Star Trek, please do Q, because Q is like one of the weirdest, strangest, yet I don't know. You feel for the dude, or it's not even a dude. It's a robot basically.
It's like a god.
Yeah, yeah. I always found Q to be really like interesting.
Yeah, he is amazing. And I kind of like, although people say Star Trek Picard, the show,
Oh, the
it's
new
a
one.
bad show. I really like that show because of the perspectives that I see, especially Q. So you actually get to see Q in a complete different light than if you were familiar with the Next Generation when he's interacting with Picard and his crew, or if you watch Voyager when he's interacting with, by the way, really, really funny interaction with Captain Janeway.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, he wanted to marry Janeway.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I haven't seen too much of the new Star Trek Picard. I've seen the first season, like pieces of it.
Mhm.
It's tough for me to like sit and watch something all the way through. So there's like bits and pieces I'm sure that I missed. But um, yeah, I mean, it's funny that so you don't like that show. Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
most of our fans, I say most, but I'm not saying all, say that that was not a good show. Um,
It's
I
way
I
different. It's way different from the
It's
originals.
exactly. I like it because of the different perspectives. We get to see something, and that's something about me. And Gio, you're probably familiar with this on our show. We talked about this a lot too, where sometimes uh, you're a fan of this IP, right? And you follow all the characters, and then the IP ends. You know, it could be a successful IP. They might have 12 seasons, multiple movies, right?
Mhm.
But there's always those questions where you see these characters on a current timeline, but you always wonder either what happened to their prior to that or after the timeline. And whenever the creators give me that answer, I'm totally on board, and I think that's what happened with Picard, where they gave me what happened to Picard after he left the Enterprise. And not only that, but he gave me a complete different perspective of the other characters that he interacted with. And one of the perfect examples is Q. Another example that I can pull up is I remember back in the day, I would watch Star Wars, and everybody's talking about the Clone Wars, the Clone Wars, the Clone Wars,
Yeah.
and my imagination, my curiosity just peaked because okay, this must be a big thing. I'm not familiar with it. I don't know about it. There's no books to talk about it. So when they announced the animation Clone Wars, I was besides myself because I said, okay, finally, I will get to see that I've been wondering about all these years. And also in the movie, when we get to see the start of the Clone Wars, it was amazing because I was among sci-fi fans who love Star Wars. And when that fight started with all the Jedi's, with all the lightsabers all at
Right.
once,
Yeah.
everybody stood up, started clapping and screaming. And that energy. Um, so that made me validated because I felt for the first time, okay, I probably are not the only one that wanted to see the Clone Wars start. And when they brought in Clone Wars, the animation, it was amazing.
Yeah, there was a lot against that. You know, I was watching something recently that was talking about how, there were the diehard fans that didn't want that movie made.
Yeah, and a lot of people. I mean, you right now, I think it's generational because you have a generation that don't like the episode 1, 2, and 3, and then you have another generation that don't like the new ones with Ray and Kylo Ren, and they think it's garbage. But the newer generation would love those and not like 4, 5, and 6, or maybe not 1, 2, and 3. So it's a difference, I guess. My experience, obviously, I'm generalizing because not everybody's of this opinion.
Yeah, it's just your perspective and opinion, of course.
Exactly. So what I seen is it might be a generational thing.
Well, I enjoyed them. I thought they were pretty damn cool. And I think a lot of people did as well because, I mean, you could just look at the statistics of who bought the thing. Or who, just the fact that we're having this conversation right now about the Clone Wars, it must have meant something out there, and at least it did for me. Now, I'm not the biggest sci-fi guy in the world. I did grow up watching like I said, Star Wars, Star Trek. I knew what Battlestar Galactica was, and I knew what the Sci-Fi Channel was. What's popular right now in sci-fi? Do we know?
I would have to say the Star Trek IP is doing a wonderful, amazing job so far, and with the creations of all the new shows. One thing that I can point out that I seen had a huge amount of fandom is the show called Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds. Okay, I've never heard of that.
So if you have Paramount Plus, you can actually get it there. What I think made that so successful, aside from the cast, great casting in there, and the stories is the fact that they are catering to those fans who love the original story, who loves Star Trek, the original series, would made famous for having Kirk and Spock. So what they're doing is they're taking a different take and they're showing you the Enterprise as it was prior to Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think is wonderful and it's amazing. And season 2 is coming up pretty soon, so I'm really stoked about that. Cool. When it comes to Star Wars, Andor. Cool. Andor. And I'm not speaking bad about the other ones because I'm like really excited for Ahsoka when it comes out, but I have to give due to what deserves. So, you know, so far those two IPs are trying to bring out great content. And I only wish the other IPs would have the opportunity to do that.
When you say IPs, you mean intellectual properties, right?
Correct. Okay. Like, for example, I would love to see another Galactica. And let me correct myself here because I might get some hate. I'm not looking for a reboot. We have the original Galactica, which some people hate. We have, that's the 1978, by the way, 1970s, by the way. We have the new Galactica, which is the 2000s. I think that's the one that I was trying to show Geo, which most people really loved. I was a little nervous about it because they changed a lot of characters, but they proved me wrong. So I don't want that to be messed with. That was perfect. But I would love to see more Galactica. I would like to see new stories.
More Galactica. Mm-hmm. Okay. What about you, Gio? What do you wish there was more of out there in the sci-fi universe right now, or what's something that has your attention?
Cyberpunk stuff, man.
Cyberpunk. Oh yes.
I need more Cyberpunk, man.
We need more Cyberpunk.
That's something that I've been dying to, but like we are right now, we had a big hype. We got a big flood of material coming out, so it's just cool down time. So it's a waiting game for me.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's end it here. I have a question. Last one. Where can people find you? Where can they listen to you? Where can they watch you?
Oh, that's very, very simple. You go to wherever you listen to podcasts. You don't have to go far. Just go wherever you listen to podcasts right now. Just press on search, type in Science Fiction Remnant, and press the follow. We are anywhere, and if we, and I'm going to say this again, if we are not where you listen to podcasts, reach out to us on Twitter or in Discord. Our Twitter handle is Sci-Fi Remnant, and I'll make sure to add that to wherever you listen to podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And what's the website?
The website is sciencefictionremnant.com.
sciencefictionremnant.com. They are Science Fiction Remnant, or at least 2/3 of it. Shout out to Ray. Ray, we hope you're doing well and all is good. We missed you this time, and hopefully we'll get you on the next one. But shout out to Gio. Big shout out to Robert. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And hey, keep doing what you do because it's doing really good.
Thank you.
All right. Well, there you have it. That's the Science Fiction Remnant podcast. We had Gio, we didn't have Ray, but we had Robert, and 3 awesome, cool, wicked chill dudes from 3 different worlds of life, coming together and just loving what they do on Science Fiction Remnant. My name is Joey B. I'm going to end it right here. This is the Blind Knowledge Podcast. We hope you have a good time. We hope you join us next time, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.